Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk, a Tulsa World virtual town hall. I'm Wayne Green, editorial pages editor of the Tulsa World. Today's Tulsa Town Hall is graciously underwritten by the George Kaiser Family Foundation. Today we'll be talking about current events facing the Tulsa Police Department with Chief Wendell Franklin. Welcome, Chief Franklin.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
We asked our readers what questions they'd like to see us ask today, and I want to get to as many of those questions as we can. But first, I want to give you a chance, Chief, to say, frankly, anything you want. You've been Chief for 3 months here. You've been through the beginnings of a pandemic and some very challenging protests in the streets of Tulsa in the past few days. With some, we've had interstate highways closed briefly and some property damages. How's it going, Chief?
It's been rough. It really has. Right now I'm operating on very limited sleep, so that's obviously been a challenge. I've been up and listening to and guiding and directing throughout the protests that have occurred here and the civil unrest that has occurred as well. So that's been rough. Obviously I've gone through a pandemic as well as a very high-profile case with the two missing children. So it just seems like there is one crisis after another, one event after another, and I'm really having a hard time just trying to adjust to that along with this new job. So it's been challenging.
Well, welcome to the Chief's office, and we very much appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. When we talked about this town hall, we had originally intended to talk primarily about the department's role in enforcing public health orders from the city and the state. And at the moment, that kind of feels overshadowed by other events, but I want to honor that original intent initially here. Enforcing social distancing and sheltering requirements aren't the sort of things that you or your officers have ever faced before, I imagine, and probably not what got you into law enforcement in the first place. Can you give me an idea of what your philosophy on dealing with the situation has been, and any problems you've had getting people to cooperate with the rules that are in effect?
That was a huge challenge for us, and from a legal standpoint, that was what we really had to work through. And I had conversations with the mayor, and of course we have legal counsel that has also been involved throughout the process. And my biggest concern was the constitutional rights of people to assemble, and were we violating those rights with social distancing? How does that play out legally? And so there were just a number of different hoops to jump through. So my primary focus, and what I kind of told the mayor about, is we need to direct our enforcement action towards those businesses, because the businesses are the ones that we have more authority over, especially in that particular realm because of licensing and things like that. So we can pull license and permits and things like that and issue citations to business owners. But for us to go out and try and cite individuals for not having a 6-foot distance and things of that nature, that's just not something that we were very comfortable with from the onset. I understand the rationale behind it, but we focus more from a standpoint of businesses that were operating and making it incumbent upon those businesses to create those barriers necessary to do business and do it safely.
Well, speaking personally, bless you for keeping your eye on the constitutional ball first and foremost. That's what police officers are supposed to do, and we appreciate it. Did you end up issuing any citations and make any actual arrests?
We did issue citations. We issued less than 20 citations total. We did not make any arrests. And one of the things that came up is if we made arrests, then we were in essence sort of stoking the fire to an already dynamic situation with the virus. So we didn't want to introduce that into the jail. We didn't want to put those individuals in our cars with us. So we were really, really reluctant, and I'm thankful that we didn't have to make any arrests. But again, we did issue citations, and we issued less than 20 citations over the 2-month period.
And I assume you issued a citation sort of as a last resort. I mean, after you'd warned somebody and give them a chance to comply willingly.
Yes, and those were directed at businesses. They weren't directed at individuals themselves, but we did have some businesses that continued to attempt to operate. Some of the bars that were closed down, had their back doors open and people coming and going out of the back door. And when we got called and notified on that, then we would respond to that location and shut that business down, as well as issue a citation to the business owner.
So, Chief, I just wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't transition at this point to talking about the protest over the weekend in response to the death of George Floyd, which coincided with the 99th anniversary of the Tulsa race massacre. What sort of orders have you given your officers in dealing with the large crowds that we've seen in the past several days? Well,
again, my big focus obviously is on our Constitution. We need to protect the First Amendment right. We need to allow persons to peacefully protest, and we're going to protect those people as they protest as well. But also, I want my officers protected. So 2 orders: protect peaceful protests and protect themselves. And then we obviously had that discussion about what if there was looting and vandalisms and things of that nature. What do we do then? That next and third and final was to protect the businesses and the properties of Tulsans.
So you've been on the scene and in direct command of the incident so far?
I have been on the scene. I was in the command post for a couple of nights, and I think that from the standpoint of being in the command post, I have great leadership, great staff that can do great things, and I really don't have to necessarily be present for all of that, but there are times in which there is that I have to make an ultimate decision. So if I'm not in the command post, then I certainly have access to my phone 24/7, and they would make a phone call to me and advise me what was taking place, or ask for direction in a certain incident.
So, Chief, we hear the term de-escalation a lot these days on national media. What does that really mean in the current circumstances?
Well, for this particular case, and what we've done with the protests is in the 2 protests that we had, one Saturday and the other on Sunday, both of those individuals that were the protest organized, we talked to them. We openly had dialogue with them because they wanted it to be peaceful as well. And so from the very beginning, we reached out to them, or they reached out to us, and we offered them solutions on how to develop whatever plan it was that they were trying to do. And exactly, take the second protest that wanted to go from Greenwood over to Reconciliation Park. We offered avenues on how to get there and what we do for them to ensure that they were safe at doing that. And that's what we wanted. So we were, with those 2 groups, we were from the onset involved in the planning stages of that. And as the crowd grew, particularly on on Sunday, and I went out directly to the site there and met with the organizer, and she said, "This is way beyond what I can control," and we knew that, and it's just sad that those circumstances took place, because she had an idea for a peaceful demonstration and how that was going to look. And as soon as she began to march with her group, a splinter group immediately went the other direction and got up on the highway. So from her perspective, the group that she was in control of, they did what they should have done. The other group that broke off from that and went to the highway was not a part of her group. And of course, we had to deal with that. And then the aftermath of that, as they marched all around town and obviously started some disruption.
You raised an important point there. I think you you'd agree with this. The violence, the property damage, that's never been sanctioned by the people who organize these protests. These protests are about making a political and policy point, not about tearing things up.
That's correct. And we obviously want people to be able to raise awareness and things of that nature. So we're going to protect that. Whether we agree with it or not, we are going to protect those rights of all those individuals to peacefully assemble. And I don't think I actually got to the point of the de-escalation piece. But what we did was obviously with meeting with organizers and being present. That in and of itself, to me, was a piece, an element of that de-escalation. And so once we did that, and we blocked the roadways and things of that nature, and later in the night when things went awry, we did form a skirmish line. That in and of itself is another form of de-escalation. Essentially what we're saying is, look, here we are, here's the police, and your protest is no longer peaceful. And so we verbalize that. We verbalize that via loudspeakers to the crowds, that their protest was no longer peaceful and that they needed to leave. And we did this on a number of different occasions. We continue to attempt that de-escalation technique. We also then, as the crowd moved up and encroached upon our skirmish line, our officers took the high road. They backed away. And I don't know if you've seen that video, but our officers literally backed up and gave them another 6 feet, and all in the name of trying to maintain peace and order. Obviously, what happened afterwards was not peaceful. I hate that it happened. I hate that it happened for our city, because I certainly wanted our city to be a model for other cities to look at and say, look, Tulsa has it right. Tulsa people can actually meet, form up, have a strong cause, and do so in a peaceful manner. But of course now, we are just another one of those cities that in and of itself are just trying to survive.
Chief, did you do anything to try to reiterate the de-escalation efforts between Saturday and Sunday? Because I felt that you were being even more cognizant of that Sunday than Saturday. Is that just my perception, or was there a change?
Are you talking Sunday into Monday or last night? Or?
No, between Saturday's protest and Sunday's protest.
Yeah, so, obviously Sunday's protest had a much, much larger crowd, and the propensity for disruption and things to go a different direction were there. So we wanted to ensure that we had enough personnel to make sure that there was peace maintained and order maintained. And so we had a much larger contingency of officers involved in that particular protest.
Yeah, your department must be very tired today, Chief. And a tired police department might not, someone might make a bad decision. Does that worry you?
That does worry me, but again, we've taken steps to ensure that our officers are well rested. One of the first things that we did was, as we pull these groups together, these are specialized individuals that have been well trained on our department. They've gone well beyond the police academy and training, and they are part of a what we call our special response team. It's actually the same team that was deployed the week before to hit the ground and attempt to do a ground search for Tony and Miracle Crook. So it's the exact same officers. So we pulled them out of their normal assignments, and we've adjusted their schedule so that they don't have to worry about anything else other than to be prepared and be ready for any type of deployment that they may need. So we're not. It is long hours. It's taxing on all of us. just the mere fact that we're having to do what we're doing is has a psychological effect on our officers. We're very cognizant of that. One of the things from a spiritual standpoint as well is we met our chaplain out at and we all prayed together. He prayed over us, and as well as we have our counselors on hand that are here for police and fire that make themselves available to officers to ensure that from a psychological perspective that they're okay. But again, rest helps us get that brain back functioning properly, and that is a key focus. So we rotate in and rotate out and try and maintain that.
Chief, today we've seen some reports of Tulsa police possibly targeting members of the local media with pepper balls or other crowd control devices at the violent incidents. Is there anything to that?
I don't believe so. I think what happened was on the first night or the first day, we talked with the media and told them that what they are doing is they are impeding us in our ability to be able to deliver service and actually making our officers targets by being on the front line with us. Because originally the cameras were right there with us, right on the front line with us, and the LED lights were on, and it was just simply spotlighting our officers and giving away our position. So we did speak to the media and tell the media that we can't have the media do that because obviously it's a safety issue for us. So we told the media, if you're going to be out there, then you're going to have to be out there in the crowd with the crowd. And so that's what happened last night. Media personnel were out within the crowd, and at one point when we deployed tear gas, one of the media persons was in the roadway. Obviously, again, when we say something is no longer peaceful and we make that announcement, then that means that it is time to go home. And anybody that stays past that is violating our order. And as officers deploy that tear gas and move the crowd back, everything is done in a strategic manner. But as we moved that crowd back, there was one instigator in that crowd that continued to hurl objects at police officers. We knew who it was. We had eyes on that individual, and when he took a step up away from the crowd, the police officer in the vehicle went after him. And as he went after him, he also deployed another tear gas and pepper ball towards that individual. And it just so happens that there was a media person right there. We can't discern who's good, who's bad. We can't look at press badges and see that that's a member of the media, because some of these individuals are wearing very similar clothing as well as carrying backpacks and other things. So very difficult to discern, but we're not trying to target the media. We have used the media to our advantage throughout this, and I've already talked about the media being a partner with us in law enforcement, at least in Tulsa, and what we're trying to do and what I'm trying to do as we try and attempt to show transparency on our department.
Right. Okay, so shifting gears slightly here, Chief, you're not just the chief of police on this one. You're the first Black police chief in our city's history, and it's a city that infamously 99 years ago failed to protect the lives and property of its Black citizens in a shameful way. How does that change the situation for you?
Well, I do, and I did think about that, particularly on Sunday as protests began, because it was right there in the historic Greenwood district. So when I talked to officers and before we deployed out, I told them that I want to protect Greenwood first off. I want to ensure that because we were getting information that there might be some disruptions there. I didn't want that. But also from the perspective of all of the other businesses, again, it is our duty as police officers to protect those businesses. These business owners have already gone through a pandemic. They've already had to close their doors and survive off of whatever they can in the interim. And now they're opening back up, and only to have their windows busted out, merchandise stolen. We need to be able to protect that. And that's what our citizens want. And so, you know, that was first and foremost, and really it didn't have anything to do with any type of racial component at all. We don't know who owns what business, but we certainly want to protect each and every one of those businesses. And again, they pay taxes and they owe it. We owe it to them to protect that. So that's what we did.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, that's it.
It may not be fair to personalize this, Chief, and I'll apologize to you for that. But can you help? I think the public would like to hear your interpretation of what the peaceful protesters want. What's this all about?
Well, the peaceful protesters are bringing notice to some of the atrocities that have taken place in all around the nation. Some of that, obviously, the catalyst to that was George Floyd, and the video and images seen from that is just something that's incomprehensible. It's not something that any law enforcement officer, to my knowledge, can stand there and defend. And so that in and of itself is what has brought this to the forefront.
One of our very persistent readers wrote to complain about the way the department handles internal affairs complaints. Can you describe how that process works briefly, and where do you come into the process? Also, I've seen you quoted recently as saying you wish you had some more authority to fire police officers who step over the line. What are your standards that you use in deciding discipline issues?
Yeah, so the way a complaint works is as it comes in through various sources, whether that's through a citizen complaining, an officer complaining on another officer, or a supervisor complaining or making a supervisor contact report. So those complaints come into internal affairs, and internal affairs then assigns an investigator to investigate that. And so once it's investigated, then it goes through the chain of command. That chain of command makes recommendations to me, and I have the final decision on what discipline, if any, comes from that complaint. If the complaint is found to be outside of our policy, or if it violates one of our rules and regulations, then we issue discipline from that. The internal affairs commander reports directly to me, and we sit down often and talk about and walk through some of the cases and some of the complaints that have come in to determine just how best to handle those. And regarding, you know, my comments yesterday, you know, I was speaking from the perspective of what Minneapolis was able to do and how they went about doing that. It was a very bold move to make. And, you know, sometimes, having researched what Minneapolis did, that chief did there, and now I do realize that I actually do have that authority to make that decision if it were to come to something like that here in Tulsa, where because charges are filed and it is a felony charge, then certainly we can place someone on leave without pay or initiate termination proceedings. And that's exactly what the Minneapolis police chief did. So I think some of I think what came out publicly really made it sound as though the termination was immediate, but apparently it was not.
So
from my research.
I want to go back a little bit in what you said about the George Floyd killing, and that you were appalled by that. Chief, you're wearing a uniform today. When you're not in uniform, do you feel safe from law enforcement when you're on the streets?
I certainly feel safe in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Obviously, I'm the chief. Everyone knows me. Even the surrounding communities, I feel safe. I, you know, now when you talk about me going to a smaller rural area in other parts of the country, no, I wouldn't feel as safe. It's certainly something that I recognize, and I don't think most people can recognize or understand that unless they are a person of color. But, one of the things that happens, I feel if I go into a store and they don't have what I need, I feel like I have to walk out of there with something and purchase something, because I don't want to walk out empty handed, because there's that stigma that goes along with my race. And again, I don't expect everyone to understand that unless you've been, unless you're my color. So there is certainly
been incidents in small towns.
Well, yeah, there certainly has been. As my wife and kids were traveling, you know, it wasn't in the state of Oklahoma. It was actually up in Kansas. But my family was traveling to a football game, and they got stopped for no reason whatsoever. And the officer in the small town came up to the vehicle, said that they were speeding, and my wife was adamant that she wasn't speeding, and the guy argued with her for a minute, and obviously she never revealed that her husband was in law enforcement, but argued with her for a couple of minutes, and took her ID, came back up and didn't issue her a citation, told her to slow down, and walked back to his vehicle. So, it's things like that yeah, it's frightening in some of those areas.
What sort of conversations have you had with your children about this?
My kids, obviously, I don't worry too much about my two boys. They're 25 and 22. I know how I raised them. I know how respectful they are towards authority, towards anyone. And so I'm not really overly concerned about that. My oldest is so fascinated with law enforcement and the Tulsa Police Department. So I don't really worry about them so much, because I know that they are going to be respectful, but we did have a laugh as this pandemic hit, and the CDC came out and said that we needed to start wearing facial coverings, and we joked about that wouldn't bode well for us of color going into a store with that. It's just kind of contradictory to where we've come from and what it's just a weird environment.
Chief, thank you for joining us today. As you described, you're under a lot of physical and emotional stress at the moment. You didn't have to be here. You're a stand-up guy. I appreciate you coming on and talking to us. Thank you too to our viewers and our sponsor, the George Kaiser Family Foundation. Please join us next week for our next Tulsa World Let's Talk virtual town hall, which will feature members of the medical and communities, the medical leadership and community leaders discussing the disparate impact of COVID-19 on minority communities. I'm Wayne Green, editorial pages editor of the Tulsa World. Goodbye for now.